When I really learned about Visiting Angels and what their mission was, it was exactly what I was looking for. And so I met with the current owners, and a year later, I took over the whole franchise here in Ocala. From there, we've opened up Spring Hill location. We've got a location in Inverness, and now we have a location in Wildwood as well. So we just keep growing and keep learning and adding to our team. And so, yeah, so it's a great fit for me. So
Wow, that sounds like quite the journey. Congrats on all of the success. What was the most challenging part of starting and the home care business?
I think for me, it was taking over actually something that was already well built and having a good foundation, just because John started when nobody knew what the industry was. And by the time I took over 8 years later of him running the business, people knew what Home Instead was and Visiting Angels. And, it kind of was becoming a household thing that for me, I really took the company apart and put it back together to make it as efficient as possible, because for him, he grew from his phone in a car. He didn't even have an office when he first opened. And so, when you grow that way, it's organic, right? But it might not always be the most efficient. And so now I think, as we've grown and the industry's grown, it's all about caregivers, finding the good ones and, keeping the good ones and, trying to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make them happy so they can make our clients happy.
Wow. And when you joined, how many employees were there? And then how has it grown since then?
We had probably around 80 to 100, just depending on the day when I first took over. And now we're about 225.
Wow. So that's quite a lot of growth. You said you took everything apart and put it together. What did you break, and then how did you fix it?
The biggest thing was just taking the whole process. And when you're new to something, you see things differently than somebody that's been working, I think, in a system for so long. But my background was also, even though it was restaurant corporate, I used to work for a large corporation in the restaurant field, and I used to go into current locations and fix their problems. And so I think for me, I was kind of targeted in the space of, let's figure out where the inefficiencies are, whether it's we have a bad payroll company or this is taking really long. Like, how can we do this better? How can we change it from 10 people touching it to 2 people touching it? So just trying to really find the efficiencies, and of course, making sure that we have the right team and the right people doing the right things. Sometimes you hire a patient care person, but that's really not their avenue. Maybe they're a better recruiter. I think when you grow from a little company into a bigger company, people get shifted and moved around, and nobody really pays attention to those things. I earned a lot of accolades in the very get-go just from really making my team happy. And I think I really tried to take the time to do those things, to look at my people and try to figure out, how can I develop you? How can I make you happy? How can I make you stay? And that's why our turnover rate is still one of the lowest ones, is because my focus is on the caregivers, because they're the ones that touches the clients every day. I can't touch 250 people a day, but I can do everything I possibly can to make my 225 caregivers happy, and if that's benefits or a raise sometimes, or a bonus, or a turkey at Thanksgiving, making sure they have the gloves they like or scrubs they like. I mean, there's small things, but they're things that are important to them as employees.
Yeah, if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers, and especially for the care business, it's the entire experience is the caregiver there. And at least for my parents, I know that the only way they've been able to survive has just been that personal touch, showing up on Thanksgiving with turkeys, and on Christmas, remembering birthdays and anniversaries. But doing it with 250 people is quite hard. What are some of the tactical things that you've done, you mentioned, either giving pay, and I think that there are constraints too, right, that you have to work with, and I think that's part of what makes it challenging.
It can't always be a pay raise. We know that. And every time, we pay them more, the price increase goes up, and we don't want to lose our industry as a whole. And I'm sure your mom is very familiar with, we all live in fear that we're going to price ourselves out of the market someday, and people just aren't going to be able to afford our service. And I think, it's very hard to kind of look at, we would love to pay them more, right? I think they deserve the world. They take care of these people that don't have anybody. But I think too, it falls in line with teachers, right? And EMTs and police officers. They should get paid the most. They put their lives on the line for us every single day, and they don't get paid a lot, And so it's kind of that public service piece. I think for us, we try to look at things that not always go to the bottom line when it comes to a pay raise or things of that nature. But what can we do to make their lives a little simpler? Sometimes it's as easy as offering them free training to make, them feel like they're developing within this, this industry within our company. When you offer them the opportunity to shine and to get a little accolade on something that they've done or achieved, I think it makes a big difference. We do a lot of little things, inter-office things, We have an annual meeting every year where we recognize people and how long they've been here. Surveys, if we send clients surveys and they get a great survey from a client or a Google review that mentions their name, things of that nature, we always try to send them a nice personalized card from everybody in the office. And we try to make sure that they know that they're appreciated. Even if it's just a $25 gift card, it's something that most companies now feel like that's your job. It's your job to get reviews. It's your job to do a great job. It is, but at the same time, just that little handwritten note of recognition and putting it on social media and saying this caregiver did a great job or whatever, those little things are important to them. Obviously, benefits, right? So, benefits is a big piece. Even though I have 225 caregivers, 50 of them are eligible and probably only 15 are going to take some type of benefit. We're not a huge number game. We're not the one that these benefit companies, unfortunately, are making money off of, right? Because a lot of my caregivers specifically, I'm a tough case. A lot of my caregivers are over the age of 55. A huge percentage of them are over the age of 65. So I have seniors taking care of seniors. It's very senior driven here. So a lot of them are on Medicare. They're not eligible. A lot of them, their husbands are the ones that are the bread maker. It's not them making $15 an hour. It's their husband that, makes the money. And so they're on their health plan. I think having the option, and especially now with Vitable, even offering, the primary care stuff, it's a nice piece because even though they might not need it, and, it's something that's offered to them that, yeah, we pay for it, whatever. But in the long run, it's something that even though they might not have needed it or were looking for it, it's an added benefit. I think everybody nowadays looks at all of those things knowing insurance is expensive, things are ridiculous, that they're just glad that we're offering something, even if they're not partaking in all of the options. So, So I think it's a lot of little stuff, school supply drives and, come in and get school supplies. If you're having a struggle and sending your kids back to school, we collect backpacks and pencils and crayons and, come help yourself to our little store. And, we try to keep up with stuff that we think will affect our caregivers, offering free flu shots right here at the office. Come get your flu shots, or pneumonia shots, whatever, so anything that we can think of that will make their life easier. We do financial aid classes, which our bank offers for free. I just partake in it. I set the classes up. I invite the caregivers. They can come in and get a little bit of financial, education. Some of it may need it for retirement. Some of them may be 25 and need to learn how to save some money. So we have a lot of different little pieces of the puzzle that I think as a whole, it makes it a nice thing.
Wow. You do quite a lot. And I could hear from your voice, it's just you deeply care about finding ways to meet your employees where they are. I guess, how did you come to hear about Vitable, and then why did you decide to partner with us?
So I actually met Vitable, your reps at the Boston annual meeting, and I actually had never heard of it before. And I am, like I said, kind of a vet owner at this point. We've been open for 20 years. I've been running it for 11. I pretty much avoid every single sales call that comes into our building because people call all the time and say, hey, we're an approved vendor for Visiting Angels, and everybody's using us, and every single company says that. And so it does get very overwhelming. So I pretty much ignore everybody. As long as I'm not looking for something, I usually don't mess with it. But they said something about, having the options where they could choose their own plans. And it was whoever spoke up on stage, they got like a little 5-minute blurb opportunity. And when they spoke, I said to the person that was with me, my VP of sales, I said, you know what? I said, we need to go see that booth. And I normally just kind of walk by everybody and just kind of see what's there. But I wasn't really in the market for anything, to be honest. And so I was just like not really spending a lot of my time at the conference meeting with vendors because I just wasn't in the market for anything at the time. And so I went and spoke to, and I don't remember her name, very nice young lady at the booth, and kind of told her about, hey, listen, you're not going to make a lot of money off of me because this is my situation. I have a lot of employees, but only this portion's eligible and only these portion are taking it. So, but here's where I'm at. Insurance is expensive anyways. And no matter what 3 plans I pick to offer, it's never the right plan for at least 2 of my employees are mad. And so to me, the option is what sold it, because I feel like when I'm in the driver's seat, I can only be mad at myself if it's a bad choice, right? And so I think people having options in this day and age of insurance is really important, because everybody has something different. They might be looking for that one prescription that's approved, or that one doctor that they can go to, or, whatever's important to them in their healthcare field, of people and providers. That's the one thing they want. And so if I pick 3 plans and none of those plans cover whatever that is, that's disheartening for those people. And so to me, I think at this point, when they said options and they're in the driver's seat and they're choosing, I was like, please sign me up. I got to hear what you got, And so, and of course, everybody I've dealt with so far, especially Ryan, obviously I got hooked up with Ryan right away. And I was just like, hey, I need to talk to another Visiting Angels owner that's doing this. And he was like, there isn't anybody. And I was just like, seriously, you're telling me I'm going to be the first one? And he was like, yeah. So I was like, all right, so here's the deal then. I'm like, because I never sign up with anybody that hasn't dealt with us, because so many companies say they understand. They do not understand our industry at all. And I'm sure your mom's been through that. And it's hard because everybody just clumps us with medical home health.
Yeah.
And so it's different. It's a different level of understanding. And so I was just like, I really don't want to do this, And Ryan was like, Candy, just give me the chance. I'm going to prove to you. I'm going to make it easy. I'm going to handle it. I'm going to make sure you're covered, And he just kept making promises. And finally I was like, all right. I'm like, I'm getting told to go with this other company that's cheaper and this, that, and the other. And I'm like, listen, do not screw this up, because I'm going to be the person that everybody's calling to find out. And already I think I've talked to, I don't know, probably 5, 6, 7 owners already about Vitable. And so it's kind of been a nonstop, people emailing me saying, hey, do you mind talking to so-and-so? Do you mind talking to so-and-so? Because of course we're now through the process. My open enrollment is done. I'm very thankful that we're through the first learning experience, because it does make it easier for me to answer questions based on that. And so, but I think that for me, and every other Visiting Angels, like, this is exactly the way that people should do benefits. So I'm a huge believer in it so far.
Well, I'm really happy to hear that you gave Ryan a chance. And I think the nuance that you described between, non-medical home care and like it's so vastly different that unless, when we started, we often joke that we sell to employers like my mom, but it really is. My mom has about 200 caregivers in Philly, and the nuances of there'd be thousands of reps probably throughout the last 15 years that would knock down their door, and it's the amount of those that actually deeply cared to build deep empathy on the problems and is probably count on both hands.
Mm-hmm.
I guess for what I'm sure there's things that we could do to improve and continue to provide even more value. How has your experience been so far?
So everything has been, it's a learning experience, I think. And I think for both parties too, because I know I've definitely schooled Ryan a few times. He has gotten, I think, in a way, we are both very lucky because he's very giving and understanding, and he's been very patient. And I think that works both ways in the sense that, I've kind of let him know, like, hey, this is what I need. I'm very much a very transparent owner. And so for me, it's important for me to work with people that can hear my feedback understand that I'm not coming from a place of I'm mad or I'm frustrated or whatever. Usually it's being overwhelmed, right? Because it's stuff that I don't know. This is your field to be experts in. I can do home care. That's my field to be an expert in. So, and so I think for me and Ryan both, it's been a great relationship so far in the sense that, I'm teaching him some things. He's definitely been teaching me some things. The more of us that get signed up, the more discussions that get had at those 3 meetings that we have a year. We have one usually in the first quarter, usually in like March. We always have the biggest annual meeting is in June, which is where you guys were at in Boston for this year. And then we have another meeting coming up in November that we're actually having in New Orleans. And so about 3 times a year, we get together as owners. And when we sit at a breakfast table and have breakfast or lunch or, on a break, whatever, those are the things we talk about. Who are you using for benefits? Who are you using for your software? How is that working out for you? And so, my thing is it may start off with 5 of us, but once things start taking off, Vitable will start taking off as long as you guys continue to provide the customer service and that connection. And you don't lose that as you get bigger and you start taking on more and more clients. We all know that growth period is what's hard, 578 locations is no small peanuts, If you can get half of those, imagine what your growth is going to be like. That's going to be my 100. And I don't know what your business does, but I know that when I had 100 caregivers, I felt the growth to 225. So guaranteed you pick up 250 new visiting angels offices to deal with. That's a good growth period for any business. So I think that personal touch and being able to get a hold of Ryan. Sam's been great too. Sam's quick to always send me an email. I love emails because I can just do it on my own time and send over what I need. And she responds quick and I'm good to go. And so they've both been wonderful to deal with. And I think as long as you keep that, just like we do with our clients, it's that personal touch that nobody has anymore. I think it makes a big difference in a company because we just want to know that somebody's going to take care of our problem. That's what we're paying for. We're not paying for the benefits. We're paying for somebody to deal with it for us. You know what I mean?
Right. That is quite profound, actually. And thank you for the feedback. This is I think the thing that that is we promise, what we aspire to be is a actual partner. You just forget about benefits, we'll handle it all. And the feedback that you shared is, it sounds like I'll work with Ryan and the team and Ali and Sam to see how we can build that into the process. So it doesn't, we make it substantially better the next time for the next set of clients. Is there anything else that could have been better in your process so far?
I don't think so. I think everything else has been great. I mean, I've had no issues with the software and, our stuff integrated into ADP rather quickly. I didn't have any issues with that stuff. So I haven't had any huge hiccups with, the site's not working or things not being filled in correctly. So in the aspects of the actual processes, it's been pretty smooth. Sam even was like, okay, if you need help explaining, even the deduction sheet or, whatever, it's it's all right there for you. So, for me, it's not been hard.
Last one for you. It sounds like you moved from a group plan to ICHRA. Why did you decide to move from a group plan?
So, so the first part of that is, yes, we went from a group plan where we had basically a basic MEC plan, and then we had 2 higher plans that we offered through Florida Blue. And it was working just fine, except for the fact that obviously, health insurance just gets ridiculous. It's went up, 15 to 20% every year. We are an older group. And like I said, those seniors that work for me, they're wonderful. Health insurance doesn't really like that. Almost all of them probably have some type of pre-existing something. And so as a group, we're probably not the most attractive group to an insurance company. And so our rates were really high. And so you've got, us as a company, we're having to pay, $700 a person across the board to make it affordable for these $15 an hour caregivers to have really expensive insurance because of how many seniors were on the plan as a group. And so that would hurt my 40 somethings in the office because they're under the group plan and with the seniors mixed in. So it was just getting to be where it was kind of ridiculous. So I liked the fact that we were judged individually and that people could pick their own insurance, because if I want a really great plan because I can afford it and that's what I want, versus my $15 an hour caregiver who just wants something basic to kind of handle the day to day. I wanted to be able to have that option. So I think for my employees, that's a big push. And so when they mentioned that they can choose their own plan, that literally sold me that they could choose their own plan. And so that's why I decided to move from the group. And I think then it puts them in the driver's seat. So if they're mad about it, they pick their own plan, it ain't got nothing to do with us. They pick their own plan. So I really do like that. And then the other company, actually, it was funny because I talked to Ryan for like 2 days. I had a conference call with him when I first got back from Boston. And, I think we hit it off right away, and just he listened to my story and kind of tried to understand where I was coming from. Want to offer a benefit, but it's ridiculously expensive. And, this is kind of the situation for not very many people, that sign up anyways, and then they're mad about what you offer. So it makes it very hard. I'm sure your mom understands that too. You go through all of this, you pay for this benefit, and then they're ticked off because you offered it in the first place and they could have went to the marketplace. So it becomes a non-benefit benefit,
Yeah.
And so I feel like Ryan really kind of connected with where I was at and wanted to be able to help me find a solution for that problem. And so I did have a good connection with him right away. Well, then the next day, I was talking to another owner from the West Coast down South Florida. And he also was in Boston, and we had kind of briefly talked about Vitable when I was there, and just talking at the table of like, what are you using? What are you using? And so he came to my home, and he also did a conference call. And I think he actually went with Ryan as well. There was somebody else, Derek, Dylan, I don't know. There was somebody else on the team too that I know was talking to Visiting Angels owners besides Ryan. And I can't remember if he had talked to the other person or if he was dealing with Ryan. So he listened to the whole Vitable spiel and did the whole conference call. And then he called me about it, and he was like, hey, have you talked to Vitable yet? And I was like, yeah, I talked to Ryan yesterday. And he was like, yeah. He was like, well, what do you think? So we kind of went through the whole scenario, and this is what owners do. I'm telling you. So it's a thing. And so it's worse than the old ladies book club. So he called, and I said, well, I think it's really great. And that, having the primary care benefit, I think is good because everybody gets it. And I was really impressed that everybody in the household gets it. So I was like, that's, it's an added benefit. Right. And, so he was actually like, yeah, he was like, but I don't know about that $1,500 or $1,800. I think it was $1,800 when he said it to me. And I was like, oh, I think Ryan told me it was $1,500. So there was a little sketch in the beginning. And I think it's wise because he was talking to the other person, not Ryan. And so I was like, I said, well, Ryan's going to give it to me for $1,500. I was like, so you need to call your guy back and tell him, hey, Candy got $1,500. That's what I want. I am very big about, I like the fact that you guys got vetted through Visiting Angels, because I think that's important, even though it's annoying to me when everybody calls and says they got vetted through Visiting Angels. It was kind of one of those things where, at least I know the basics have been checked, right? Like, I'm not looking up your business license and all that kind of stuff and making sure you're legit if I know that obviously Visiting Angels has done their due diligence on you guys. And so when we kind of went back and forth and talked about it, I discussed it with my partner, and I was just like, hey, yes, he's saying he can get $500 a month with this other company, where, Vitable is saying, it's $1,500. I said, so here's where I'm at. We just need to kind of decide, if we're going to take a chance on this, I'd much rather take a chance with a larger company that I know has been vetted versus some mom and pop.
I see. Trust was a really important part for you, making the decision.
I'm not an insurance professional, so I need you guys to be.
Yeah. This has been so helpful. One last question for you. Are there types of coverage that your employees would, you think your employees would be interested in? We're constantly looking for interesting ways to add coverage or services, because we have doctors that work for, they work for our medical group. We can do interesting things that, other just brokerages or admin only. And as an example, mental health was something that we added as a response. Curious if there are, GLP-1s or other things like that have come up from your employee base, or that you've been asked that might be interesting for us to consider or find a way to add.
Yeah, I was actually really surprised that mental health was one of those pieces. because it is something that comes up, and that is one like that. And I know, like, rehab centers and some of those addiction and substance abuse kind of things usually falls in, like, obviously a family member type of situation. And so, but those are really the only two things. We do offer AFLAC to our office staff. So we have some, insurance policy kind of stuff, life, insurance kind of stuff. But that's mostly, it's my office staff. You know what I mean? Not too many of our, caregivers partake in stuff like that. But really, that's all I can really think of at the time.
Yeah, yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense. Well, if anything else comes up, feel free to ping. Like, we are here to, whenever we fall short, the commitment that we have is that we'll course correct, and we really want to be a true partner to our customers, to help them, better serve their employees, grow faster. If there's ever anything that we could do, we're all ears. And we have a lot of exciting things in our roadmap that we want to continue building to provide even more values. But I'm really grateful that you chose us. You chose us as a partner, and we want to continue to earn your trust over time.
Hope it works out and you guys sign up as many as you can.
Thank you so much.
No problem. Have a good day.
You too.
All right. Bye-bye.